Just walk away, idiot! The hoarse shout echoed through the rain-soaked street. A woman in an evening gown stumbled, her heel broken, collapsing onto the wet pavement. Mascara ran in black streaks down her pale, cold cheeks. Luxury cars sped past, headlights sweeping bright, then abandoning her to darkness. A man in a worn jacket stood nearby, gripping his backpack. A small child hid behind him, eyes trembling as she watched. The man bent down, lifting the woman from the puddle. You don't have to be alone here. But this seemingly random moment would open a secret that would change both their lives forever. The man's name was Ethan Miller, 37 years old, former American firefighter, now working as a hired carpenter in Krakow after his wife died in a fire, leaving him to raise their young daughter alone. He was tall, broad-shouldered but hunched, eyes tired and worn, his hands marked with a long scar from the day he'd risked everything in the flames, trying to save her. His daughter Lily, 7 years old, was thin but spirited, clutching a tattered stuffed rabbit everywhere she went. After that rainy night, Ethan brought the woman who'd collapsed on the street back to their small attic apartment with wooden floors that creaked. The woman was Clara Duvall, 32 years old, CEO of a renowned event management corporation, who just left a gala after a bitter argument, drunk and watching her pride crumble. Clara slumped on the old sofa, her dress soaked through, eyes red and swollen, lips trembling. Ethan made hot soup and placed it in front of her. Lily hesitantly took a wool blanket and draped it over the strange woman's shoulders. Clara tried to maintain her arrogance. I don't need anyone's pity. Ethan's voice was calm. This isn't pity. This is my home. Here you're safe. Clara looked around the small apartment, her eyes stopping on the wooden wall where pencil marks measured Lily's height over the years. Next to them was a faded mark that read, Emma, age 5, the name of the mother who'd died. Clara reached out to touch it, then quickly pulled her hand back as if afraid of breaking the memory. Ethan remained silent, didn't explain, didn't blame. The apartment was simple, a worn couch, a small kitchen table with mismatched chairs, but everything was clean, organized, cared for. Clara noticed the way Lily moved around her father, the unspoken communication between them, the way Ethan automatically cut Lily's food into smaller pieces, the way Lily knew to bring her father his reading glasses without being asked. This was what a real family looked like, not the cold mansion she'd grown up in, with hired staff and absent parents. Why did you help me? Clara asked quietly. You don't know me. Ethan sat down across from her, his scarred hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Because someone needed help. That's reason enough. Most people would have walked past. Most people aren't responsible for teaching a 7-year-old what it means to be human. He glanced at Lily, who was pretending to read a book, but clearly listening. I want her to grow up knowing that helping people isn't optional. It's who we are. Clara felt tears threatening again. When was the last time someone had helped her without wanting something in return? Lily approached shyly, holding out her stuffed rabbit. Mr. Hops makes me feel better when I'm sad. You can borrow him tonight. Clara took the worn toy with trembling hands. Thank you, sweetheart. I'll take very good care of him. That night, Clara slept on the couch under the wool blanket, clutching a child's stuffed rabbit, and for the first time in years, she felt safe. Ethan lay awake in his small bedroom down the hall, staring at the ceiling, wondering what he'd just invited into their quiet life. But when he heard Clara's breathing slow and steady, no longer hitching with silent sobs, he knew he'd made the right choice. Some people needed saving, not from danger, but from loneliness. And Ethan understood loneliness better than anyone. The pencil mark on the wall reading Emma, age 5. The next morning, Clara woke up wearing Ethan's old shirt, the sleeves so long they covered her fingertips completely. She found him in the tiny kitchen, flipping pancakes while Lily bounced in her chair. Daddy, that edge is burning, Lily called out cheerfully. I like it best when it's crispy. Clara laughed. A real laugh, the first one in months that wasn't forced or fake or performed for an audience. The three of them sat around the small wooden table, pale morning light filtering through the foggy window. Clara spoke softly, almost to herself. Last night was the first time in years I slept without nightmares. Ethan froze, his hand stopping mid-pour as he was adding milk to Lily's cup. Those simple words hit him with unexpected force, reminding him so much of something his wife Emma used to say after particularly bad days. The vulnerability in Clara's voice, the quiet admission of pain, it touched something deep in his chest that he'd thought died in the fire. Lily, oblivious to the charged moment, pulled out a messy crayon drawing and pushed it across the table to Clara. A small house, a young tree, three people holding hands. Clara smiled, really smiled, and carefully placed the drawing under the salt shaker like it was precious art. Ethan watched this scene, his heart lurching in his chest. He hadn't expected this. A drunk CEO, a stranger, somehow reaching the deepest lonely places inside him. That afternoon, while Lily played in her room, Clara and Ethan sat on the small balcony overlooking the gray Krakow rooftops. Clara spoke first. I grew up in a mansion with 12 bedrooms. My parents threw parties every weekend. But I was so alone. They only saw me as a tool, something to be shaped and displayed. Her voice cracked. I built a company from nothing because I thought success would prove I was worth something. But the higher I climbed, the lonelier I became. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice rough. 3 years ago, there was a fire. Old apartment building, faulty wiring. I was first on scene. He looked down at his scarred hands. Emma, my wife, she'd gone back inside to get Lily's favorite blanket. I told her to wait, but she didn't listen. By the time I got to her, the smoke was too thick. Clara reached out instinctively, placing her hand over his scarred one. I carried Lily out first, went back for Emma, found her collapsed near the stairs. His voice broke. She looked at me and said, "Take care of our girl." Those were her last words. Tears ran down Clara's face. I'm so sorry. I quit the fire department the next day. Couldn't do it anymore. We moved here to Emma's hometown, started over. He looked up at Clara. But starting over doesn't mean the pain goes away. It just means you learn to carry it. They sat in silence, two broken people sharing space, and somehow the silence wasn't empty. It was full of understanding. Lily appeared in the doorway with her art supplies. Can Miss Clara help me make decorations for the balcony? Over the next few hours, they strung up paper lanterns and hung wind chimes made from old silverware. Lily chattered constantly, Clara laughed at her stories, and Ethan watched them both with something that felt dangerously close to hope. As the sun set, painting the sky orange and purple, Clara stood at the balcony railing looking out at the city. In my world, she said quietly, everything has a price. Success costs your relationships. Power costs your integrity. Wealth costs your soul. She turned to look at Ethan. But here, in this tiny apartment, with the creaky floors and the mismatched furniture, I feel richer than I've ever felt in my life. Ethan stood beside her. Funny, I look at you in your expensive clothes and your CEO title, and I see someone who's been paying prices they shouldn't have had to pay. Maybe we're both right, Clara whispered. That evening, Lily insisted Clara stay for dinner. They made pasta together, flour everywhere, sauce splattering the walls, all three of them laughing. When Lily went to bed, she hugged Clara goodnight. You're not sad anymore. I can tell. After Lily was asleep, Clara helped Ethan clean the kitchen. Their hands bumped reaching for the same dish. They both pulled back, embarrassed. Thank you, Clara said, for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you, Ethan replied, for reminding me what it feels like to want tomorrow to come. Clara carefully took the crayon drawing from under the salt shaker and tucked it into her borrowed shirt pocket, right over her heart. The crayon drawing of the house with three people kept in Clara's shirt pocket. 5 days later, everything changed. A black Mercedes pulled up in front of the apartment building, drawing stares from neighbors. A man in an expensive suit stepped out, followed by a lawyer and an assistant. Richard Beaumont, Clara's fiancé, radiating wealth and entitlement. He knocked once, then pushed the door open without waiting for an answer. Clara, this charade ends now. Clara stood up from where she'd been helping Lily with homework, still wearing Ethan's old shirt and borrowed sweatpants. Richard's eyes swept over her with disgust. Look at you, living like a pauper in this hovel. This isn't a hovel, Clara said quietly. This is a home, something you've never understood. Richard slapped a thick document on the table. Our wedding is in 3 weeks. The contracts are signed. The investors are waiting. You don't get to just disappear. Ethan stood up, crossing his arms, his voice low and dangerous. No one's keeping her here. She can leave anytime she chooses. Richard barely glanced at him. And who are you, the charity case playing house with my fiancé? I'm the man who found her crying in the rain while you left her there. That got Richard's attention, his face flushed red. I had a business dinner. Clara knew that. She chose to make a scene at the gala, embarrass me in front of clients. I chose to be human, Clara said, her voice growing stronger. I chose to tell you I couldn't marry someone who cares more about stock prices than people. And you walked away. Because you were drunk and hysterical. I was honest for the first time in our entire relationship. Richard's lawyer stepped forward. Miss Duvall, you signed a prenuptial agreement. If you don't honor the marriage contract, you'll lose your position as CEO. The board has already drafted the motion. Clara's face went pale. The company was everything she'd built, her entire identity. Richard smiled, sensing victory. It's simple, Clara. Come back now. Marry me and keep your empire. Or stay here playing pretend family and lose everything. The room went silent. Lily, who'd been sitting quietly at the table, suddenly spoke up. She doesn't want to go with you. You're mean. Richard laughed cruelly. A child. How perfect. Clara, you're getting parenting advice from a 7-year-old. Don't talk to my daughter. Ethan's voice cut like steel. Richard stepped closer to Clara, reaching for her arm. Let's go. The car is waiting. Ethan moved faster, stepping between them, not touching Richard, just blocking his path. She said no. That's all you need to hear. Richard's face twisted with rage. You think you can give her what I can? Look around. You live in poverty. You're nobody. He's somebody who sees me as a person, not an asset, Clara said, standing beside Ethan. That makes him worth more than your entire portfolio. Richard pulled out a small velvet box, opening it to reveal a massive diamond ring. This costs more than this entire building. That's what you're throwing away. Clara took the box, looked at the ring glittering cold and beautiful, and walked to the small planter on the balcony where Ethan had been growing herbs. She placed the ring in the dirt, covered it with soil, and pressed down firmly. Here's what I'm planting instead, she said, pulling a seed packet from the kitchen counter. Something that actually grows. Something of my name. She pushed the seed into the soil where the diamond ring lay buried. Richard stared in shock. That ring is worth $200,000. Then consider it the most expensive fertilizer in Krakow, Clara replied. Richard's composure finally cracked. You'll regret this. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again. Your reputation will be destroyed. My reputation? Clara laughed, but it wasn't bitter. It was free. Richard, I don't have a reputation. I have a mask I've been wearing for so long, I forgot what my real face looks like. And I'm done wearing it. She walked to Ethan's side, took his scarred hand in hers. This man pulled me out of the rain when I was nothing but a drunk mess on the street. He didn't know who I was, what I was worth, what I could do for him. He helped me because that's who he is. She looked directly at Richard. You left me in that rain, and now you are angry because someone else had the decency you lack. Richard grabbed his briefcase. Fine, destroy your life, but don't come crying to me when you're broke and forgotten. I won't be broke, Clara said calmly. I'll just be honest. And I'd rather be honestly poor than dishonestly rich. Richard and his entourage stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. The silence that followed was deafening. Clara stood there shaking, Ethan's hand still in hers. Then Lily ran over and hugged Clara's waist. You were so brave. Clara started crying, but this time the tears were relief, not pain. Ethan pulled both of them into his arms. Are you sure about this? You just gave up everything. Clara looked up at him, tears streaming but eyes clear. No, I just figured out what everything actually is. She walked to the balcony planter, where the seed she'd planted sat above the buried diamond ring. Let's see what grows, she whispered. The diamond ring buried under soil, replaced with a seed. 2 weeks after Richard's visit, Clara did something she'd never done before. She walked into a small bakery near the apartment and asked for a job. The owner, an elderly Polish woman named Pani Kowalska, looked at her suspiciously. You know how to bake? No, Clara admitted, but I can learn. Why would a woman in expensive clothes want to work in my bakery? Clara looked down at her outfit. She was still wearing clothes she'd borrowed from neighbors, having left all her designer wardrobe behind. These aren't expensive, and I want to work here because I need to learn how to make something with my own hands. Something in Clara's honesty convinced Pani Kowalska. Okay, but I pay minimum wage and you start at 5 in the morning. Perfect. The first batch of bread Clara made was burnt to charcoal. The second batch was undercooked in the middle, but the third batch came out golden brown, smelling like heaven. Clara cried when she pulled it from the oven. I made something with my hands, something real. Pani Kowalska patted her shoulder. Now you understand, this is honest work. In the evenings, Clara would come home covered in flour, and Lily would run to greet her. You smell like cookies. Ethan would have dinner ready, simple meals, and they'd eat together at the small table, talking about their days. Clara told them about the customers, the recipes she was learning, the way her hands ached, but in a good way. Lily told them about school, about her friends, about the drawings she'd made that day. Ethan talked about the furniture he was building, the satisfaction of seeing rough wood become something beautiful. These were ordinary conversations. But to Clara, they were everything. On weekends, Lily took Clara to the outdoor market and taught her how to bargain for vegetables. Clara was terrible at it, making Lily laugh so hard she got hiccups. They bought flowers and planted them in pots on the balcony. The seed Clara had planted above the buried diamond ring began to sprout, a tiny green shoot reaching toward the sun. Ethan built a small table for the balcony so they could eat outside when the weather was nice. Clara painted it white and stenciled Sunday dinner on top. Neighbors started noticing. They began bringing dishes to share on Sunday evenings. Soon, the small balcony dinner became a community event. Pan Novak from downstairs brought pierogi. The Garcia family from upstairs brought Spanish tortilla. Pani Kowalska came with fresh bread from the bakery. Lily ran between the adults, laughing, collecting hugs from everyone. Clara watched all this with wonder. I used to throw parties for 200 people in ballrooms, but I never felt this connected to anyone. Ethan squeezed her hand. Because those were networking events. This is family. One evening, Lily brought out an old photo album. Daddy, can we show Miss Clara pictures of Mommy? Clara expected Ethan to refuse, but he nodded. If you want to, sweetheart. They sat together on the couch, Lily between them, flipping through pages of memories. Emma had been beautiful, with Lily's same bright smile. She looks kind, Clara said softly. She was, Ethan replied. She would have liked you. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. Really? Really, she always said the world needed more people who were brave enough to start over. Lily leaned against Clara. Mommy told me before she went to heaven that Daddy would need someone to help him smile again. I think she meant you. Clara wrapped her arms around Lily, looking at Ethan over the child's head. His eyes were wet, but he was smiling. That night, after Lily went to bed, Clara and Ethan sat on the balcony watching the tiny plant grow stronger. The board officially removed me as CEO yesterday, Clara said quietly. It's all over the news. Former CEO abandons empire for unknown man. Do you regret it? Clara thought for a long moment. I regret all the years I wasted chasing something that made me miserable. I don't regret a single day here. She turned to him. Ethan, I need you to know something. I'm not here because I have nowhere else to go. I could find another job, another apartment. I'm here because this is where I want to be. Ethan took her hand, running his thumb over her knuckles, now rough from baking. And you need to know that I'm not offering you a place to stay out of charity. I'm asking you to stay because we need you. I need you. Until when? Ethan looked at the tiny plant sprouting from the soil. Until that plant blooms, and then we'll talk about it again. Clara smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. It's a deal. The Sunday dinner table on the balcony and the sprouting plant. 3 months later, early morning sunlight poured into the kitchen where Clara was dusting powdered sugar over apple tarts she'd made from scratch. Her hands moved with confidence now, the movements practiced and sure. She'd been promoted to head baker at Pani Kowalska's shop. Her salary was a fraction of what she'd made as CEO, but every zloty felt earned and real. Money that came from creating something with her own hands, from serving customers who smiled and thanked her. The apartment had changed too. Small touches everywhere that showed Clara lived here now. A coffee maker she'd bought with her first paycheck. Books on the shelf mixed with Ethan's carpentry manuals. Her apron hanging next to Lily's small one by the stove. Lily ran into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, holding a new drawing. A house with a green balcony, 3 people holding hands under a flowering plant that was covered in white blossoms. Under the picture, in careful block letters that showed how hard she'd worked on it, Lily had written, "Home." Clara's breath caught. Tears filled her eyes immediately. She knelt down and pulled Lily into a tight hug. "This is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever given me." "Really?" Lily asked. "More beautiful than all the fancy things you had before?" "So much more beautiful," Clara whispered, "because this came from your heart, and that's worth more than anything money can buy." Ethan appeared in the doorway, coffee cup in hand, his hair still messy from sleep, watching them with soft eyes. He'd started smiling more in the past few months, real smiles that reached his eyes, not the polite ones he'd worn like armor for years. Clara stood up, Lily's drawing clutched in her hands, and made a decision she'd been thinking about for weeks. She walked to the closet and pulled out the velvet ring box from the back of a drawer, where she'd kept it hidden after digging it up from the planter. Dirt still clung to the velvet. She placed it in Ethan's hands, her fingers trembling slightly. "I dug this up yesterday from the planter," she said quietly. "I've been carrying it around trying to figure out what to do with it, and I finally know." She took a breath. "If you still want me, if Lily still wants me, I want to stay. Not as a guest, not as someone passing through, as family. Real family." Ethan looked at the diamond ring, then at Clara. Then he did something completely unexpected. He took the ring out and walked to the balcony planter. He held it up to the morning light, watching it sparkle cold and beautiful. Then he buried it again, deep in the soil beside the now blooming plant. "I don't need that to know you're committed," he said, returning inside and closing the balcony door behind him. "But I do need you to have this." He pulled a simple brass key from his pocket, the apartment key worn smooth from years of use. "This is yours now, not because I'm giving you a place to stay, because this is your home, our home." Clara took the key with both hands like it was made of gold. She held it for a long moment, feeling the weight of it, the meaning. Then she carefully clipped it into her hair like a barrette, the brass gleaming against her dark hair. "I'll wear it every day," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. "I'll never take it off." Lily jumped up and down, clapping. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" Clara picked her up and spun her around. "It means I'm staying as long as you'll have me, which I hope is forever." "Forever and ever," Lily squealed. They walked out to the balcony together, all 3 of them, and looked at the plant that had grown from the seed Clara planted the day she buried the ring. It was covered in delicate white flowers now, their petals opening in the morning sun. Ethan picked up his old camera from the shelf, the one he hadn't touched since Emma died. He looked through the viewfinder at Clara and Lily standing by the flowering plant, then slowly lowered it. "This moment is for living, not for capturing," he said softly. Clara looked at him, her eyes shining with recognition. She stepped closer, taking his free hand. "That night you found me, when I woke up the next morning, I told you something. Do you remember? You said it was the first time in years you had slept without nightmares." "Yes." Clara's voice was steady but full of emotion. "And now I want to tell you something else, something better." Ethan waited, his heart pounding. "Now I have dreams," Clara said, and her smile was radiant. "Real dreams, a future I actually want to wake up to, a life I choose every single day." Ethan's heart lurched in his chest, just like it had that first morning when she'd said those words about nightmares. The echo of that moment transformed into something even more beautiful, hit him so hard he couldn't speak for a moment. Lily squeezed between them, taking both their hands, creating a circle. "Are we a real family now? Like, officially?" "We've been a real family," Clara said, kneeling so she was eye level with Lily. "From the moment your daddy pulled me out of that rain, from the moment you lent me Mr. Hops to make me feel better, from the moment we all chose to be here together." But now it's official, official? Lily pressed, her eyes bright. Ethan and Clara looked at each other, smiled, and said in perfect unison, "Now it's official, official." They stayed on the balcony as the morning grew brighter, watching the neighborhood wake up around them. Pan Novak waved from his window, calling out a cheerful good morning. Pani Kowalska walked by on her way to open the bakery, pausing to blow Clara a kiss. The Garcia children played in the courtyard below, their laughter floating up. This was Clara's world now. Small, simple, real, honest. She'd traded a mansion for a tiny apartment with creaky floors, a corner office for a bakery that smelled like yeast and sugar, a diamond ring for a brass key clipped in her hair, and she'd never been richer in her entire life. "Family isn't where you're born," Clara said softly, echoing words she'd heard Ethan say to Lily weeks ago. "It's where you choose to be, and it's choosing again, every single day." Ethan wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "And I choose this, every day, for the rest of my life." "Me too," Lily chimed in, hugging both of them. "Me three," Clara laughed through happy tears. That evening, they had Sunday dinner on the balcony with all the neighbors, just like they did every week now. As plates were passed and stories were shared and laughter filled the air, Clara looked around at these people who'd become her family. She caught Ethan's eye across the table. He raised his glass to her, that rare, genuine smile lighting up his whole face. And Clara knew with absolute certainty, with every fiber of her being, that she'd made the right choice. Not because it was easy, not because it was what people expected, not because it looked good on paper, but because it was real, because it was chosen, because it was love. And real chosen love was worth everything she'd given up and so much more. As the sun set over Krakow, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and purple, Clara reached up and touched the brass key in her hair. She was home. Finally, truly home. The brass key clipped in Clara's hair, the fully bloomed plant on the balcony. If you believe healing stories like this deserve to be told, leave a comment below and subscribe to Hidden Heart Stories. We tell the stories that should never be forgotten. Thank you for listening.